Riggins have a different jersey number than 44 when he got here? He did. He wore number 29 when he arrived in D.C. Because Moses Denson, who was a running back in 74, 75, was wearing 44, but then he ended up not being on the team, so Riggins took over 44. He was 44 as a New York Jet. So he wore 29 in the preseason before 76, the 1976 season, but he wore 44 once the regular season began. So certain things like that, I don't mind because it's short and sweet. But Sabah, if you're going to send me literally, one DM after another implying all of this stuff about Jaden Daniels from this show Quarterback, and then you're going to say my silence is deafening, and then I do read it on the air, and now you don't want me to read it on the air. I don't know what you want me to do, but I've already read it. Look, the real issue here is, you believe what you want to believe, and you take the information that sort of supports how you believe, and you ignore some of the other important information. I mean, when you say that the guy is a guy who will only play if he's 100% and not sore anywhere, and when he can practice, you ignore the entire 2024 season when he injured his ribs and he didn't practice and he wasn't 100% and he played multiple games in a row. Did you just forget that? I don't know what you she said when I said that on my podcast, you proved my point, the fact that he played with cracked ribs first season. Why not play with sore knee and sore hamstring or multiple weeks after dislocate? Well, because it was a different season in 2025. It was a different season. Baker Mayfield was playing for a division title, which is why he was playing injured. This team decided to sit him for the final 4 games because they had nothing to play for. They were eliminated. They were out of it. It was a bad season because it wasn't just him, but essentially, they had more starters from week 1 miss football games than any team in the league by a lot. The season was doomed. Why would you put him out there? Now, let me just say, I did want him to play in those final 4 games. I thought it was important that he play in those final 4 games, especially given that some of the players offensively were back for those final 4 games. They chose to sit him after that Minnesota game, which was the last injury. Trust me, if they had something to play for, he plays in those final 4 games. If that Minnesota game is a critical game, he comes back in that game after the Van Ginkel pick and him getting, tossed up into the air and landing rather hard. Yeah, I don't know what to say. You're making an assertion that there's substance, there's fact from just the year before. You don't have to go back 10 years or 5 years. The year before, he played hurt. He played sore. He played less than 100%. He played without practicing all week. Your statement was he can only play if he is 100. He'll only play if he's 100% and not sore anywhere! ! Well, that's just categorically untrue. That's factually untrue. I'm going to respond to that. And then the other part is, we've seen this move. Those of us that have had you as a part of the show have seen, you have always kind of taken something that is very insignificant. By the way, I do it too sometimes, and so do a lot of the listeners. But the not with his team, but on a VR headset, that's just been kind of your move to imply that he's not a good teammate, or that he's self-centered, or that he's a diva, or he's off by himself and the rest of the team he's ignored. No, just understand this, okay? Because some of us have just a tad more information than you have. I would not be able to, for all the money in the world, find one person in Ashburn, not one, on the record or off of it, who would agree with any of the implications that you made, that somehow being on a VR headset away from the team is somehow a bad thing. No one on the record or off of it would tell you that he is soft, that he's a, quote, fragile flower. Nobody would. So instead of, another 7 direct messages refuting what I just said, just take it as I'm not sharing an opinion with you. I am actually giving you the facts. Nobody would tell you that the people that are around him, that he's soft or he's a diva. No one would. Of course, things could change. He could become that. He could become soft. He could become a diva at some point, but that's not who he is right now. That's not who he's been at any point. So you can shove that back to where it came from, because that's just not something that has any remote connection to the truth. I'm looking forward to watching it. I just did not have a chance to get to it last night. Yeah, I don't even know. I didn't watch anything last night. I think the weekend in New York zapped a lot out of me. It was a fun weekend. Good dinners, good crowds, then the game itself, which was fun. All right. So I think it was, who had the idea yesterday? Who came up with the idea? I think it was Anthony.
I want to say Anthony, yeah.
Yeah, Anthony, by the way, is just, for years, has been one of my absolute favorite people who listens to the show and calls the show regularly. And Anthony came up with, as he often does, by the way, he'll veer off the main subject. He'll answer the question of the main topic, which I think yesterday was soccer related. And then he'll just say, can I veer off for just a moment? He's always very polite. And he said, and I said, of course. He said, you get to pick one player off of any other roster in the NFL to put onto our team. No cap ramifications, no compensation required. There's literally no downside to taking this player. It's not going to cost you anything. You get to take any player off of any other roster and put that player on our football team. Okay? Washington, put that player on our team. I immediately answered Myles Garrett. That was his answer, and that was your answer, right? All three of us agreed.
Immediately.
That would be my answer. But I want to do this where you get to pick one player offensively off of any other roster and one player defensively off of any other roster. It's possible that defensively we'll get other answers because Myles Garrett's a little bit older, and there are some younger up-and-coming stars. Will Anderson Jr. would not be a terrible answer to this question, because I don't know if Anthony asked the question for this particular season or just for this season and moving forward. Will Anderson Jr. is not a bad answer. On the list of position-by-position breakdowns for the ESPN thing, Myles Garrett I know was number 1. Who was number 2 on pass rushers? I'm going to guess that it was Will Anderson Jr. or Micah Parsons. Do you have that?
I'm pulling it right now. Number 2, Micah Parsons.
I got it too. Edge rushers. Number 1, Myles Garrett. Number 2, Micah Parsons. Number 3, Will Anderson Jr. Number 4, Max Crosby. Number 5, Aiden Hutchinson, who's 25. Danielle Hunter, good God, what a career he's put together. He's 6. TJ Watt is 7. I'm sorry, but TJ Watt's got to be higher on this list. He's got to be higher on the list.
Where would you put him then?
I'd put him ahead of Danielle Hunter. I would put him ahead of
Hutch?
Max Crosby. I would put him ahead of Aiden Hutchinson.
All right, so then 4.
You know, I'm not so sure. If I would take T.J. Watt over Micah Parsons.
Ooh.
Micah Parsons, there's a little bit of a concern there with him being a bit of just a one-trick pony. And when I say that, he's a dominant pass rusher. Dominant. But the rest of the game isn't better than average. Whereas Watt is an all-around player, and Watt is a major playmaker as a pass defender in the quick passing game. I mean, I don't know what these numbers are, but I'm gonna guess that T.J. Watt is way up there in deflected passes for defensive linemen. That stat exists somewhere, because I remember Montez Sweat, the year he was here, was way up on that list of deflected passes. Yes, I would take T.J. Watt would be number 3 for me behind Garrett and Will Anderson Jr. But 301-230-0980, we're opening up phone lines for this, 301-230-0980. You get to pick one offensive player and one defensive player off of any other roster, no cost, no cap considerations, and put them on our roster for this year and the future. So it's not just for one season. And that's where, somebody might say, well, Will Anderson Jr. is 24 years old. And he is turning into a dominant defensive player. How about this with Will Anderson Jr.? And I think T.J. Watt's got some of this to him too, but they wrote this in his write-up. Anderson's steady improvement over 3 seasons elevated him to top tier. He was tied with Las Vegas's Max Crosby in the voting, but won tiebreakers by getting more top 5 votes. Anderson creates havoc. He's credited with causing 43 incompletions in 2025, 6 more than any other rusher. He has 30 sacks in 3 years, a Defensive Rookie of the Year award, and an All-Pro honor. All that made it easy for Houston to commit $150 million on a 3-year extension. One NFC scout said about Will Anderson Jr., I still feel like he's underrated to a degree. True 3-down force multiplier who demands attention and has the rare ability to elevate the play of teammates. That stat is a stat I'd love to see. The causing incompletions for defensive linemen. I'm sure that's a combination of deflections and throwaways, maybe. Forced throwaways, because that's a stat that's important. It's not a sack stat, but when you force the quarterback to unload the football quickly and it's incomplete, like to throw it away, that's not as good as a sack because you don't get the lost yardage with it, but it's a pretty effective play. It's a 0-gain play and a lost down or a completed down. 301-230-0980, 301-2... God, I may be talking myself into Will Anderson Jr. It's just that Myles Garrett at 30 is still just so absurdly special. And by far and away, the most disruptive defensive player of his era. I would say more so than Aaron Donald, in part because of the position and what he was asked to do. It's close. The last 10 to 12 years, it's Garrett and Donald. Put them in any order you want to put them in. I don't care. You get to pick one defensive player and one offensive player off of any other roster in the league and put them onto our roster. So obviously need plays a part in this if you want need to play a part in it, which would mean we're looking for, I don't know, maybe you're going to go Sauce Gardner. Maybe you're going to go with a corner, potentially, because we need a corner. Maybe you're going to go with a true interior defensive lineman. I'm going with the best defensive player in the league. I'll tell you who my offensive player is when we come back. Max will as well, but phone lines are open, 301-230-0980. The offensive player, you'd pluck off another roster, and the defensive player, you'd pluck off another roster. No cap considerations, no compensation considerations. You get to put them on our team for this year and moving forward. Give me the 2 answers at 301-230-0980. 0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Man, a lot of you think you know exactly who I am going to select as my offensive player.
Listen, man, I did
with
too.
Max. G wrote me the same thing, talking about, I know who your offensive player is going to be. Yeah, you do? Maybe not. I said it yesterday when Anthony called in.
Which you did do that.
I did say it. I mean, it may have been brief, but I did say it. So the question here at 301-230-0980 for our team, you get to pluck one player on offense, one offensive player off of any roster in the league, one defensive player off of any roster in the league, put that player on our team for this year and moving forward at no cost, at no salary cap hit, etc. So there's no consideration given to money, to cap space allocation. So for me, I think I'm going to stick with Myles Garrett, even though I tried to talk myself into Will Anderson Jr. The difference is that I don't know how many more years from Myles Garrett I'm going to get. He's 30. He's just ahead of everybody else, in my opinion. As great as Will Anderson Jr. is, as great as potentially Micah Parsons is or will become, Aiden Hutchinson at 25 is an interesting guy. TJ Watt at 31, Danielle Hunter at 31. These guys are too old right now, I think. And I should say that Myles Garrett entering his 30s, Will Anderson Jr. is a close second for me. He's a close second. I think we're going to be talking about Will Anderson Jr. for another decade, about how great he is. Certainly about another 5 or 6, 7 years. And Myles Garrett may only be another 2, 3 years. But Myles Garrett, for me, has been the one player in the league outside of some of the quarterbacks, Mahomes, et cetera, that literally counts as like more than one player. He's like adding 2.5 players to your defense. And yeah, we added a lot of pass rushers. We did. We just didn't add Myles Garrett to the roster. And you could say, well, the need's greater after the players we added. The need is right now at corner. That's really where we need players. So you would add Pat Surtain, or you would add, Sauce Gardner or Christian Gonzalez. Too bad we could have added Christian Gonzalez a few years ago. No, Myles Garrett is my answer defensively. Your answer defensively, Max, same as yesterday, Myles Garrett?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah. But I do want to give some variety here to this conversation, because obviously the number one is Myles Garrett. But if I were to look at any other position on the ball, it would not be a corner. It would be Kyle Hamilton. He would be making the trip just a little bit south to join Washington and cover the back end. So yeah, that'd be my guy.
I think Anthony, when he posed this yesterday, may have said just for one season. For one season, it's easy. It's Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
For this season and moving forward, you have to take age and condition into consideration. Look, I was a big Kyle Hamilton. He was my guy in that draft. I said, this is the guy. You take him at 11. You don't even worry about it. They didn't. They traded back, and they ended up with Jahan Dotson and Sam Howell and Brian Robinson Jr. and Yankoff. Was that the other one that they added?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I also like Jahan Dotson in that draft. But anyway, I don't think for me it would be a safety. And I know that he is very much a borderline hybrid safety. But I'm going to stick with Myles Garrett. Offensively, it would seem that many of you think you've got me figured out. And G says, hold on, where is it? G, we all know you're picking Bijan Robinson as your offensive player. Yeah, he's in strong consideration, but I'm not picking Bijan. I'm picking Justin Jefferson. I mean, this team does not have, moving forward, a superstar wide receiver. Terry McLaurin is 30 years old, going to be 31. I love Terry. He's a number one receiver. He's a top half of the league number one receiver. He's not Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. I've always preferred Jefferson to Chase just a little bit. The size and the route running. Chase, to me, like when I see Jamar Chase, it looks like a great running back and great wide receiver when he has the ball. He is a bull in a china shop with the ball in his hands. He's such a physical runner too, and of course he can run away from you. Give me Jefferson because he's going to stay open against anybody. Put him on the other side, Terry on the other side. My God, how good would this team be offensively? Who's your offensive player?
So everybody thinks that you were going to take Bijan Robinson, but
Right.
I am going to be the one to take Bijan Robinson because I think he just elevates the run game to a whole nother level. Him and Jaden Daniels would be an unbelievable combination. I think he just changes, and especially in like this new offense that David Blau's rolling out, I'm excited to see. I do think that it's going to be a bit more run heavy, so I think Bijan would cook in there. But if I had to go with a receiver, it would not be Jamar Chase, and it would not be Justin Jefferson. It would be Jackson Smith and Jigba. 23 years old, incredible route runner, can get down the field with the best of them. Give me JSN or Bijan Robinson.
Bijan was the number one ranking in the ESPN thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Bijan to me is right now the best back in the league, and I think you go a few steps before you get to number two. And number two, I guess for me, would be Christian McCaffrey ahead of Gibbs, ahead of Barkley. How did the rankings come out on running back?
Bijan 1, Gibbs 2, Jonathan Taylor 3, Christian McCaffrey 4.
I mean, the McCaffrey thing, the injuries and the age wouldn't have me picking him for this, okay? But in terms of for one season right now, if you gave me a chance at running backs and said they're going to be healthy for the entire season, Bijan would be 1, Christian McCaffrey would be 2.
Sorry, Saquon is 3, Christian McCaffrey 4, Jonathan Taylor 5.
Okay. I'm sorry, but McCaffrey is a better all-around back than Gibbs and a better all-around back than Barkley. I like Gibbs a lot, don't get me wrong, and he's young too, but if you on the running back front, Bijan's clear-cut number 1. McCaffrey, for me, for one season, and you're telling me he's going to be healthy, is a clear-cut number 2. And then we can debate after that, Saquon, Gibbs, Taylor, who else is on that list?
Derrick Henry, James
my thing is
Cook.
not pulling up the rankings. It keeps saying not available.
No, I got
some
you.
reason.
Derrick Henry 6, James Cook 7, Devon Achane 8, Kenny Walker, new Kansas City Chief at 9, and then Breece Hall rounds out the top 10.
Where's Josh Jacobs on that list? First of all, is he
first honorable mention?
He's first honorable mention.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Man, James Cook's really moved up the list, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it turns out
ways.
It turns out he's actually better than his brother, and I don't think I saw that coming. All right. I got Miles and JJ, and Max has Miles and a bit of a shocker, I think, JSN. I mean, look, he was uncheckable last year. Justin Jefferson is literally not coverable by one person. You have to double him. Can you imagine what that would mean for Terry, for Chig? All right. Let's start with Saeed. Saeed, go ahead. You get to pluck one offensive player off of any other roster, one defensive player off of any other roster, and there's no cost, no cap considerations. Give me your 2 players.
I got Jamar Chase with Puka Nacua, honorable mention, and Kyle Hamilton at the safety.
Okay. You know, Puka Nacua is he's so good. I mean,
he's so good, and he's 25 years old.
Yeah.
We're not thinking about him too much because he kind of had, a lot of drama and some injury stuff last year. But I think he's great. And honestly, I was going to give an honorable mention for Kyle Hamilton. I really like that corner for the Texans. I think his name is Stingley.
Stingley Jr. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that guy. And Kevin, do you have 3 more seconds for me to just chime in on the Sabah thing?
Not quickly. I actually during the break I just decided I'm just going to leave it alone. I'd rather leave it alone. All right, let's just leave it alone. It's very hard. I don't really. You know what? Silence now moving forward on the whole subject. There's too much sensitivity on the other end, and I'm not going after anybody individually here. So no, I don't. I'd rather not. Thanks for the call though, Saeed. I appreciate it. I don't need to make this public. Most of you have kind of noticed that there's not a lot of room for her calls in recent weeks and months anyway. I shouldn't have brought her up, but it was such a crazy, she's entitled to her opinion, but it was just kind of an absurd notion. And overwhelmingly what I've heard about Jaden from everybody that's watched it is what one of the emailers said. Like it's confirmation of what we hoped he was, which is he's all about ball. He's a total pro. G, go ahead. You get one offensive player, one defensive player.
Just because everybody else going to name him, and he is the pick, but I'm picking Patrick Surtain Jr. because I wanted him coming out of college, and on top of what we already got up front, we drafted Sonny Styles. I think the defensive linemen going to have a better year because they know they've been stinking. So I would pick Patrick Surtain Jr. because he don't get scored on, Kevin. He ain't been scored on since college, man. He liked that. And then I'm going with Jahmyr Gibbs, who I actually think I love how you be rooting for Bijan, who is a monster, but I think Jahmyr Gibbs better. Like you said, Jamar Chase looked like a running back sometimes. Once he catch that football, Jahmyr Gibbs is a running back and can be an all-pro wide receiver. He showed that type of talent, man, outside in the slot, everywhere. You can put him everywhere on the field. And with Jaden Daniels, that'll be cooked chicken, man. We would be bacon. And we know who Sabah would pick. She'd pick Drake May, and she'd trade Jaden Daniels, man. I'm telling you.
You know, the one thing with Gibbs, and I don't know this, it's just a gut feel on him. He doesn't look this up, Max. Give me the snap counts. I think Bijan is bigger, and because he's bigger and stronger, they feel like he can hold up with more snaps during a game than Gibbs. Gibbs is what is he? G 5'8", 5'9"? He's tiny.
5'10", 200. 5'10", 200.
5'10", 200. Okay.
But guess what?
What?
1,200 yards last year.
I'm a big fan, but I for whatever reason, my gut tells me. Now, David Montgomery was a part of that offense, but so was Tyler Algier in Atlanta. Bijan is a bigger, sturdier, physical specimen than Gibbs.
Hey, I'm a fan.
Yeah, I know you are.
I see the toolbox, and also, that last name of Gibbs has done us right. So I would love to see that in a burgundy and gold uniform. And I tell you, if you supplant Jaden Daniels where golf is, they got still electrifying offense even more, in my opinion.
I agree.
And yeah, that's who I pick because everybody going to pick Myles Garrett. Everybody going to pick Justin Jefferson. Everybody going to pick Chase. Those is obvious picks, but Patrick Surtain Jr. and give me Jahmyr Gibbs, man.
Our team would not be in bad shape adding Gibbs and Pat Surtain Jr. The second, the third. Thank you, G. By the way, did you look up the snap counts for the two?
I did. So Jahmyr Gibbs has 737 snaps in 2025. And then I looked up Bijan's. Bijan had 860 snaps.
Okay, so he definitely more snaps. Again, like Gibbs, remember, Gibbs was not, I got to go look this up. Gibbs as a rookie was really used much more sparingly, remember?
He was a rookie in 24, correct?
23.
20, yeah. Okay, so this is interesting, the Jahmyr Gibbs deep dive on his snap counts, because he had 680 snaps in 23, and then 24 and 25, it levels off into 691, and then he gets a little bit more, 737. But David Montgomery's carries stay at 2025, 408, 2024, 407. So the usage has been about 65-35 in favor of Gibbs the past 2 years.
I'll tell you what, I mean, I like Gibbs. Don't get me wrong. I like him a lot. I still think that Washington's in trouble in that playoff game had David Montgomery not been able to play, because that was the first game back from injury, and they wanted to get him carries. And Jahmyr Gibbs was averaging 10 yards a carry in the first half against our defense, and only carried, if my recollection is right, it was 14 carries for the game. I mean, he should have had 23 carries for the game, and we'd have been out in that round because our defense couldn't stop air. Stay on hold. Ross, Andrew, Anthony, Billy. We've got a phone line open, too, if you want to jump on. 301-230-0980. You get to pick one player on offense and on defense off of any other roster in the league with no cap considerations, no compensation given up for said players, and you get to put them on our team for this year and moving forward. Anthony, I'll kick it off with you because, Anthony, this was his idea. Anthony helping to produce the show. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. I got to tell you, sometimes my favorite conversations, even during the season, are more about the league than just our team, especially this time of year. I mean, we are a week from tomorrow. They will have their first practice, all right, for training camp. Rookies are going to report Friday this week. And this is better, you know? Yes, it's a hypothetical. Doc would be killing me right now. If he's listening, he probably is. Meantime, he does hypotheticals all the time. Has he gotten back from his he was on his boat for a couple of weeks. He's got a big old boat, 3-4 garages, central air. I mean, he is a man of means for sure. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. You can pick a player off of any other roster in the NFL, an offensive player and a defensive player. Put them on our roster with no cap considerations, with no draft picks or anything given up for that player. Who's your offensive player? Who's your defensive player? I gave out Myles Garrett and Justin Jefferson. Max gave out Myles Garrett and Jackson Smith-Njigba. Anthony, this was his idea yesterday when he called in. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me offer some clarification on the original premise.
Okay.
So the original, I mean, what you're doing now is fine, but the original premise was we get to pick a player off of one team, and the other teams get to pick a player off our team also.
Oh, well, that means that Jaden Daniels is gone.
Exactly. So your strategy has to be
well, but we're not doing it that way now because I think everybody would pick Mahomes or Burrow or Lamar or another quarterback, knowing that you're going to lose your own.
Well, the thing about it is I hadn't dived deep enough into how do you determine who gets to pick first and so on and so forth. But that was
it doesn't matter who picks first because you're going to pick. We know who we're going to lose. Right. Who else would anybody? What other player would be picked off of our roster?
Right, but it also it affects who you get to pick.
Yeah, but knowing that you're going to lose Jaden Daniels, you're going to pick Patrick Mahomes. You're going to pick, you're going to pick the elite quarterback of choice because you're going to need one.
No, somebody picks Jaden. If we're 10th in line to pick somebody, Patrick Mahomes is not going to be there.
Oh, I didn't know we were doing a draft that way. That you did not make that clear to me. Okay. All right. Well, let's go.
That was the original premise.
Okay.
So just to give you some clarification.
Got it. But let me just say, knowing that you're going to lose Jaden Daniels, you're going to have to pick a quarterback.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
But are you going to be in position to get that quarterback? That's the issue.
Yeah, well, that would be a tough, radio segment because we'd have to line it up as a draft with other people picking, right? For on behalf of other teams. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So give me your two players.
So if I'm picking in the here and now and looking 2 to 3 to 4 years down the road, I'm still going with Myles Garrett. But if I'm going 10 years down the road, I'm going with Will Anderson Jr.
Yeah, me too.
And on offense, it has to be Cincinnati
Chase.
Receiver. Chase.
Okay.
Damn, I can't.
Jamar Chase.
Name.
Yeah, Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase.
Yeah,
Jamar Chase. It has to be him. It's just something about him that you say JJ is uncoverable. I don't think Chase is coverable. He just burns everybody.
I wonder who they would say, like, if we took, a Sean McVay or somebody like that and just say, who's the better space creator? Who's the better route runner? I think Jefferson is considered to be the most precise and really space-creating route runner in the league. I'm not saying that it's not so close. Chase is, I think, a better vertical threat, a better deep threat, and maybe even a better contested catch guy. But there's a lot of space when he catches it too. I think when we're watching football, I like the receivers that constantly catch the ball with nobody around but somebody and some like two people started near him. That's when you know there's true greatness. When they can create that space, they can create that separation even against great corners and sometimes double coverage. And I feel like Jefferson does that more than anybody.
I don't know. Let me ask you this question. So when you separate greatness in any position, at what point does it become nitpicking? What
pretty quickly.
What eliminates? Say again.
Pretty quickly.
No, what I'm saying is what separates, say, Deacon Jones from Myles Garrett? What's the differentiator?
I don't know. You give me your answer and then I'll know where you're going.
No, I don't have an answer. What I'm saying, okay, you have
Jerry it becomes
Rice,
nitpicking when you're talking about greatness, when you're talking about, truly the elite of the elite and you're trying to separate them, it more often than not it's nitpicking. I mean, we've had these conversations before. There's only one position. I think you'd agree with me on this, and you're a longtime NFL fan like I am. There's only one position that there's no debate on who the greatest of all time is, right? You know the position, correct?
Right.
Jerry Rice.
Correct.
No one debates that Jerry Rice isn't the greatest wide receiver of all time. Number 2 would probably be LT as an outside linebacker. No one's really going to ever debate that LT isn't the greatest of all time. But almost every other position has a major debate between 2 or 3 players, sometimes more. So there isn't a lot that separates the greatest of all time, rarely. All right, I got to run. Thank Anthony. Great job creating this idea for this topic. If you're on hold, stay there. One player off of any other roster on both sides of the ball, offensive and defensive sides of the ball, you get to put under our team for this year and moving forward at no cost. Who are the 2 players? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So I'm probably an idiot when it comes to this. There used to be a stat, and there were multiple places to find it on deflected passes. I can't find that stat anywhere, Max. You can't either.
No, we have scoured NFL Pro high and low to try and find these, and it's not coming up. I'm going to keep looking, though.
I would like to find that stat. Now, on PBU's pass breakups, if you take it, look at it, they're all cornerbacks, that lead the first 50 players. But if you go to like the first of the D linemen or linebackers, Cody Barton last year led the league. Tremaine Edmonds was second. Van Ginkel was third. And then tied for fourth was TJ Watt. I'd suggested that TJ Watt is one of those guys that gets his hands on a lot of footballs. So he was tied for fourth in the league in PBUs for that position, for edge rusher, which they call linebacker for the purposes of this. There's no number. I don't have the numbers for D linemen though anywhere. I'll get to it. I'll find it. But TJ Watt, more so than almost any of those pass rushers. Let me just see on the list last year. I mean, Van Ginkel, the dude is just, the guy knows he's 2 steps ahead of everybody in anticipation. Let me see of the other great players. I'll find more info. 301-230-0980. You're picking a player off of any other roster on in the NFL, an offensive player, 2 players, offensive player, defensive player, to put onto our team with no cap consideration, no cap ramification, and you don't have to give up anything for that player. I picked Myles Garrett and Justin Jefferson. Max picked Myles Garrett and Jackson Smith-Njigba. So it's our roster, so need has something to do with it. To be honest with you, given that we only have on our roster legitimately 2 A-plus players in Jaden Daniels and in Laramie Tunsil, I think that's how the league would view it. Terry's an A player. You just want more A-plus players. And Myles Garrett would be your A-plus player. Justin Jefferson would. None of you have added players that aren't A-plus players. But maybe, position and need should have less to do with it, like it was a draft. But you're picking that player on both sides of the ball for not only this year, but moving forward. Let's go to Bay, who's been on hold. Bay, thank you for holding. Go ahead.
Man, thanks for taking my call, Kev
Sure.
and Max. Man, I'm thinking about it. I thought about it. Since Jaden Daniels is going to start playing under center, and I don't know if he played center much in college. I know he hasn't played much in the NFL. I'm going to go with Tyler Liptenbaum because we need a quarterback of that offensive line that's going to help him.
You're picking a center?
Yes, sir. I think about when we had Big Baby Boy back in the 80s playing that daggone Russ Grimm, playing that center. Everybody was good to go on that offensive line.
Jeff Bostic was our center.
Yeah, just my fault. Yeah, Jeff Bostic. Thank you.
Yeah.
And on defense, I'm going to go with Chris Jones. If anybody knows about getting to the quarterback or getting in open space, knowing that Chris Jones is going to take on stuff and going to demand a double team, is Leo. And what better person to have in front of Sonny Styles with all that speed and athletic ability? Big Chris Jones. Yes, sir.
So very interesting selections. You've gone with 2 people right up the middle of the field, right? And people will tell you got the middle of the field's really important. Your D tackle, your free safety, your middle linebacker, your free safety for sure, and then your center, your quarterback, your lead back. I was saying to Max during one of the breaks that in today's game, you can make the case that great interior pressure sometimes is more important than great edge pressure. Chris Jones is great. Don't get me wrong. He's also what? How old is Chris Jones now? 33, 34 years old, Max? Jeffrey Simmons would be my selection if you told me you've got to pick an interior defensive lineman.
Chris Jones,
last year I would have said Jalen Carter. There's clearly some issues with Jalen Carter. Remember, he's an absolute game wrecker when he's interested. He's not always interested in being a game wrecker on every snap. Jeffrey Simmons is a game wrecker every single snap. So I would take a much younger. How old is Chris Jones?
32.
Oh, he's only 32? God, I thought he was older than that.
He just turned 32 as well.
Yeah. Jeffrey Simmons is what? I got it. 28. He's 28 years old. All right. That was interesting. Tyler Linderbaum and Chris Jones from Bay. Ross, go ahead.
Kevin, what's good in the hood?
What's up, Ross? How you doing?
I'm good, man. You just mentioned my guy. They both have something in common with Sean Taylor, my all-time favorite Redskins. But I'm going to take a pair of spitters. I'm going to go Jalen Carter on defense. And I know what you said about his motivation and to play. When you go from playing from Kirby Smart to playing for Nick Sirianni, that might do something to you. I don't believe that that'll be the same thing if he came in and played for a motivator and a player's coach like Dan Quinn. I feel like he came to this team, he'd be full time, and he'd be 10 times better than the interior guys we have. And The other, obviously, would be Jamar Chase. I would have those two on our roster immediately. Same thing with him. You know what I'm saying? I think, actually, you know what? I almost said something crazy. I was going to say he's a better deep ball thrower than Joe Burrow, but at the same time, though, he's going to go from one elite quarterback to another. So give me Jalen Carter on defense and Jamar Chase on offense.
Those are good ones. I just pulled up the Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle list on ESPN from the position by position voting from last week or the last couple of weeks. So Leonard Williams was number 1. Jeffrey Simmons was 2. Jalen Carter was 3. But listen to this write-up on Carter. Carter's one of the toughest evaluations among the top 10. He's immensely talented and has made 2 Pro Bowls. All but one of his votes were in the top 7 for the purposes of this voting. But his pass rush prowess is modest with 13.5 sacks during his 3-year career. Carter's production dipped in 2025 with 3 sacks and 5 TFLs, though he batted down 6 passes, which tied for the most among defensive tackles. See, that stat is out there, Max. We got to find deflected passes by D linemen and edge rushers. One NFL defensive coach said he's a problem, a game wrecker. You feel his presence out there consistently. And then here's the key. Several evaluators argued, however, that was not the case on every snap. A few voters said Carter's not the best defensive lineman on his own team, opting for Jordan Davis instead. He flashes 10 times a game, but gets dragged far too often by average players. That's last year's season for Jalen Carter was a rep hit for him because going into last year, there was a feeling that Jalen Carter might end up being one of the top players in the game, not just at the position, but in the game. But there is a consistency issue with Jalen Carter, no doubt. Thank you, Ross. Let's go to Andrew. Andrew, one player off any other roster on both sides of the ball, putting both of them on our team with no salary cap, no compensation considerations. Who are you choosing?
I'm going with Will Anderson Jr., the fact that he's 25,
right,
on that beast defense from the Texans last year, and then Jamar Chase. Just go watch quarterback and see how much he helped out and saved Joe Flacco. I think it used to be Justin Jefferson, but now Jamar Chase has kind of taken that mantle, and I think he's the go-to receiver in the league.
You know what, Andrew? That's the part, and I haven't watched more than an episode. I can't wait to get to the part where Joe Flacco's traded to Cincinnati, and he's got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to throw to. Because
it's great.
Because I still think one of the games of the year last year, because of the absolute experienced brilliance of the 2 quarterbacks, was that Thursday night game between the Bengals and the Steelers where Aaron Rodgers and Joe Flacco put on an absolute show of how to play the position that night. And Flacco, I think, threw for 400 plus, and it was Higgins and Chase, and it was look up the game. I want to say it ended like 41-38 or something like that. It was a crazy game. Yeah, Will Anderson Jr. is not, I get it. Like he's 24-25 and Myles Garrett's 30. And there is a lot of similarities between Anderson Jr. and Garrett. I would put Garrett, like if Will Anderson Jr. reaches Garrett's level, fine. Right now, I think it's hard to reach the level that Garrett's played at through his career, really. I don't think there's been a more disruptive player defensively in the league. Can you imagine what it's going to look like this year with him on a really good team for the first time in his career? There may be an increased appreciation of Myles Garrett playing for the Rams this year. We might think this time next year at 31, we might say, oh, no. It's Garrett times 10. Let's go to Cyrus. Cyrus, go ahead.
Kevin, how are you? You took the two players right out of my mouth. I was thinking Justin Jefferson and Myles Garrett right away, but I'll be different than your picks. What came to mind for me offensively was Devon Achane.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the speed combo with him and Jaden together in the backfield?
But you could say that about Gibbs.
I could, but Devon Achane seems in the realm of possibility because if they start off 0-4, if I'm Adam Peters, I'm giving them a call just to ask. It'll probably be too much. It'll probably be like a first plus, but I'm calling. I'm calling to ask. And then on defense, it'd be Patrick Surtain because we deserve it. We've had to deal with Marshawn Lattimore and Emmanuel Forbes and Michael Davis. We just deserve a cornerback that's physical, but not physical to the point where he draws a flag every other play. I think that would really shore up things in the secondary.
You know, the thing about Bijan and Gibbs and Achane, they're also great receivers. You know, that's the thing that and McCaffrey obviously as well. You know, it's funny about the running back position because every year it kind of changes. Because this time last year, would there be anybody that wouldn't have said Saquon Barkley first? I think you'd have been hard pressed to find anybody that wouldn't have picked Barkley. But you know, Bijan Robinson had one of the great seasons in recent memory for a running back, you know, an all-around yardage as a runner and a pass receiver. And Achane's the same way as a pass catcher. He's outstanding as a pass catcher out of the backfield. And, you know, Bijan's a threat, obviously, to go 90, but not in the same way as Achane or Gibbs. I mean, Devon Achane, every time he touches the ball, you're thinking there's a chance it's a house call. You know, it's kind of like Tyreek Hill catching the ball in recent years. It's a possible house call every single time the ball's in his hands. I think you'd say that about Jamar Chase too. Yeah, good. I'm glad you went a little bit off the path there. Well, PS2 certainly not. All right, Billy, go ahead.
Kevin, good morning. On the players, I would. So yesterday I said I would take Justin Jefferson. I reviewed based on the call players that were available just by position. If I was the general manager, I would absolutely take Trey McBride, the tight end out of Arizona. That guy with Jaden Daniels.
He's really underrated.
Like tight end.
I shouldn't even say underrated. I think the league certainly knows how great Trey McBride is. But I think most fans, because he's been, you know, languishing out in Arizona, don't really understand that he's a top 3 tight end in this league. Where was he on the tight end list?
They had him number 1 on the AP.
Well, Bowers, I'd still take Bowers over McBride. McBride was 2 among the voters, you know, coaches, league execs, GMs, scouts. Bowers was 1, McBride was 2, Kittle was 3, Laporta 4, Tyler Warren 5. Tyler Warren's going to be special too, man. Really special.
He
Trey McBride's outstanding.
126 passes from the worst quarterback in the league last year.
Yeah.
Well, he had 200 catches with Jaden.
Yeah, I know. No, he's
oh my
he's
God.
truly one of the best players in the league that my sense is a lot of NFL fans really don't know much about. The league knows about Trey McBride, and they've known about him for a couple of years now. But he is absolutely special. By the way, another one of those guys that when he got picked, I'm going to say he was picked in the 3rd or 4th round, like Kittle. Wasn't Kittle picked in the 4th, 5th round, maybe? McBride's second round pick. My fault. He was a second round. Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin, that was the 2022 draft, and we took a tight end in the 5th round. Could you imagine if we had gotten that guy? I know we had Jordan, but
yeah. Well, no, we didn't have Jordan.
This guy is
2022.
We didn't have Jordan Reed in 2022?
No, he was gone. He was gone when Jay was the coach. He was gone.
Well, then that's official.
I don't think Jordan Reed was a part of any of the Rivera teams.
The 2022 Commander draft was the worst draft in the history of the NFL. On the defensive side of the ball, as a general manager, I would take the Surtain out of Denver, but as a fan, I would take Crosby because his motor and just watching him as a fan on Sunday, that guy is just fun to watch. And I like to watch football, and it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah. Max Crosby does have like one of the most relentless motors, as they say, of any player in the league at any position. There's no doubt about that. All right, let's go to Paulie. Paulie, go ahead.
Big guy.
What's up?
To the W, man.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Hey, listen, man. The offensive one, you heard it before. I'm going to say it again. Jamar Chase, man. He's the best receiver in the league. So give me Chase. On defense, give me Fred Warner. Team him up with Sonny. And also, give me Brandon Aubrey. 3 sides of this thing, baby.
I said offense, defense. I did not say special teams. But he would be number one on special teams. There's no doubt about that.
This thing, man. He's such a weapon for Dallas, bro. You know what I mean? When you get anywhere close, man, it's almost an automatic 3, man.
I want to see where I'm going to guess that Fred Warner's got to be near the top, if not number one, of the inside linebackers. Yeah, number one. Yeah, number one. Fred Warner, the number one off-ball linebacker on that list. Roquan, 2. And the rookie last year from Cleveland, Schlesinger, is 3. He was spectacular. I think this time last year, I think Zach Bond may have been number 1. But Fred Warner's special for sure. I don't think I'd take an off-ball linebacker as I need a player that's more disruptive. I need a corner or I need a pass rusher.
Who's more disruptive than Fred Warner?
Myles Garrett, Will Anderson Jr.
At the linebacker position, man. Those guys
I understand that. I'm just saying that I want, if I'm going to take, my defensive player is going to be like an absolute game-wrecking pass rusher or an absolute shutdown corner. It's going to be one or the other.
Nah,
Fred Warner's never had, Fred Warner isn't a pass rusher. So
you don't have to be a pass rusher, man. I want somebody who can lead the defense, somebody who can stop the run.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And somebody he can stop the run and he's effective in the passing game, man. And give me Brandon Aubrey, man. Brandon Aubrey.
With the game the way it's played today, man, you got to have, hopefully one of our 2 guys ends up being a guy that when you get to the 40-yard line in the league today, if you get to the other team's 40, you got to have a really good chance of coming away with no less than 3. You really do. It used to be you got to get to the other team's 35. Now it's the 40. Look, with Aubrey, it's basically if you get to midfield, you've got a shot at 3. All right.
I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say this for a leave. I think our guy Lane is gonna take over Devontae Turpin as the best punt returner in the league this year. He's gonna have a good year, a big year this year.
Was Turpin the best punt returner in the league?
I think Turpin. I mean, he might not, stat-wise he might not be, but talent-wise and how teams be trying to kick away from him all the time, he's the best.
Yeah. No.
returner in the
He's up
league,
there,
so.
but really more as a kickoff returner, Turpin, right? Than a
And
punt
punt
returner.
returner. Yeah, but I think Lane is going to have a special
Turpin
season.
last year.
I think Lane is going to have a special.
Kevontae Turpin last year led the league in kickoff return. Well, kickoff return yardage, not average, but he's a ridiculous kickoff return guy. Punts, no, he was nowhere near it. He only averaged 5.5 yards per punt return last year. Jalen Lane was up there in average yards. He was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He was seventh, in the league in punt returns last year in terms of average. All right, thank you, Paulie. Appreciate that. Good calls from all of you. An interesting conversation. There were a lot more answers than I would have originally predicted. I would have said, and Pat Surtain may have. We didn't keep count. Pat Surtain may have been the number one vote getter on defense. And I don't hate that. I don't hate that. But I still think I'm old school where it's just like, give me the guy that's going to disrupt the game with his pass rushing ability more than any other player on defense. And to me, that's Myles Garrett followed by Will Anderson Jr. Either one of those two players. Offensively, we had a lot of answers. Although, ironically, did anybody select Bijan Robinson?
I honestly think that I think it was one or two folks.
We had Achane. We had obviously we had Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah. We had multiple. We had somebody say Tyler Linderbaum.
We did. We got a lot of Jamar Chases though.
All of our NFL coverage on the Team 980 is presented by Xfinity. Score the most reliable Wi-Fi. One price, 5 years, guaranteed. Xfinity. Imagine that. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Okay. I mean, I'm sure it's me. Of course it's me. I finally found what I was looking for, which is the stat passes deflected at the line of scrimmage. Passes batted is the way Pro Football Reference describes it at the line of scrimmage. I could find that stat for career and overall all time, but I was looking for last year, and I nailed it. TJ Watt led the league in passes deflected at the defensive line of scrimmage. He had 7. By the way, he played 14 games, so he missed 3 games. So TJ Watt led the league in 25 last year, playing 3 less games than the max, with 7 batted passes at the line of scrimmage. Max Crosby was second with 6, but he was tied with, by the way, one of my favorite players in the league too, Derek Brown from Carolina. Jordan Davis was on that list. Montez Sweat. This is why I brought it up, because Sweat was really high up on the list when he was here. He finished tied for 8th with 5. So 2 less than Watt. Who else is on this list that's interesting? Van Ginkel is on the list. He had 5. Jalen Carter's on the list. He had 5. But TJ Watt's just been that way throughout his career. He's just been that guy over and over again. In 24, in 24, Cameron Hayward led the league with 10 batted passes. In 23, it was Khalil Mack who led the league. TJ Watt was tied for 3rd that year. If we go back to, what was the last year that Sweat played in Washington? When did we trade him? In 22? Did we trade him in 22? 23?
23. It was 23.
We traded him in 23. Okay. I guess I could just go to Montez Sweat's stats. Of course, it doesn't have it in the individual stats. You got to go to the advanced defensive stats. All right, whatever. TJ Watt's been one of the best at that. He's disruptive. He is also a guy. I mean, how many interceptions does TJ Watt have career? Like, I always find it interesting, those edge rushers that also end up with some picks. Like, Ryan Kerrigan was good at picking. I mean, Ryan Kerrigan had several career interceptions, didn't he? Forced fumbles, too. Ryan Kerrigan was exceptional at forced fumbles. TJ Watt's got 9 career interceptions as an edge pass rusher. That would seem to be a lot for a career for that position, don't you think? I think it would be. How many did Ryan Kerrigan have in his career? It's not going to be 9. It's going to be less than that. He had 3. TJ Watt's got 9 career interceptions as a pass rusher. That's got to be close to all-time high. He just has incredible feel, incredible anticipation, then on top of it, great hands. Who else? I mean, interception-wise, you got to be kidding me, man, right? To have that many career interceptions playing that position. Love to see, kind of let's see if we can come up with the all-time career interception leaders for a defensive lineman, not a linebacker, but a true pass rusher. Interceptions, career. And then if we, oh God, this is impossible to do too. Yeah, it's going to be, it's all DBs and you can't separate it by position. I think you told me that on Pro Football Reference.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah. But I would bet you that a pure, like, TJ Watt's not a drop into coverage a lot linebacker. He is a go get the quarterback edge rusher. I'm not saying that he doesn't drop into coverage. Of course he does on occasion. But that's a lot of career interceptions for that position. I'm going to guess that that's a lot of, I mean, the greatest pass rushers in history, the all-time sack leaders, right? Let's just say, let's look at a guy that, like, a comparable to TJ Watt would be Bruce Smith. Bruce Smith's the all-time leading. You know how many career interceptions Bruce Smith has in 19 years of playing? Two career interceptions. What about LT's a bad comp? LT's going to have a bunch of interceptions. He's got 9. The greatest outside linebacker in the history of the game, for my money, the greatest football player I have ever watched at any position in my lifetime of watching football. LT's got 9 career interceptions, and he's a true stand-up outside linebacker. TJ Watt is much more of a three-point stance defensive end, more times than not. That's pretty impressive, right? 9 interceptions career. I mean, some of the greatest guys that have played his position have 0, 1, 2 interceptions. TJ Watt's got 9. I mean, even Ryan Kerrigan's 3 for a career is somewhat impressive. Myles Garrett doesn't have, and I'm going to say that Myles Garrett probably doesn't have many interceptions at all. Now, he's consistently played as a defensive end. You're not Myles Garrett. I'm guessing, I don't know this for sure, but Myles Garrett, I don't think, has dropped into coverage a lot during the course of his career. Myles Garrett, career interceptions 0. TJ Watt 9. They play the position differently. I understand. God. But he does have 125 and a half career sacks. And by the way, 23 forced fumbles. That's another thing to look for. The all-time forced fumble list leader. Might take me a while to find that one. See if you can find that one. I want to mention that Window Nation has a deal going on right now where if you've been thinking about replacing older windows with newer windows, if you've been thinking about, wow, it's been a hot summer and my air conditioning bill is much higher than my neighbor's, it's probably your windows. They're probably too old. Too much of that cool air when your air conditioning is running is escaping through those old windows. So if you've given that thought and you've talked with your significant other or you live by yourself and you want to swap out your old windows with new windows, all I ask is give Window Nation a chance to come out and help you. It starts with a free in-home estimate. They'll be out there when it's convenient for you. In an hour or less, you'll find out which of those windows are costing you money and which ones are not, which ones need to be replaced versus those that do not. And they'll leave you with a quote, and then they'll leave you alone. They're not going to pressure you. They're not going to obligate you to anything. You get to make your decision once they leave. And if you decide to move forward with Window Nation, first is just the company you'll be dealing with. 45,000 five-star reviews on social media. Rated number 1 by Forbes magazine as the number one window installation company in America. And then on top of that, you're going to get 50% off of everything you purchase right now. All right, any style of window, and they've got over 1,500 styles to choose from, you're going to be paying half price, 50% off everything you purchase. And then add to that, if you decide to finance the purchase, and why wouldn't you with this deal, no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest charged for 2 full years. You'll get the windows for free for the first 2 years, and then you can start paying for them, or you can pay it off after 2 years. 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. Mention my name. They'll take really good care of you. my guy Patrick from Chevy Chase, he sent me a text and he said Ron McDowell had 12 career interceptions. That's insane. Who's Ron McDowell? Some of you are asking. Ron McDowell, a.k.a. the Dancing Bear, was a player who played for George Allen's Redskins in the 70s. He had played not with George Allen's Rams teams. He came from somewhere else. Whatever. George Allen brought him to Washington when he became the coach. And he had 12 career interceptions, and he was not a drop back into coverage defensive end. He was not. TJ Watt with 9 career interceptions at the position, and Julius Peppers has 9 as well. But Ron McDowell, those of you who were children of the 70s or even adults in the 70s, you guys remember old Ron McDowell. He was one hell of a player on just great George Allen defensive teams here in Washington in the 70s. His best season was his first season in Washington, in which he had 3 interceptions from the defensive end position. By the way, I also looked up forced fumbles career to see where TJ Watt is on that list. He's currently tied for 18th all time with 36 forced fumbles in his career, but he's, got career left. All-time leader in forced fumbles, Robert Mathis with 52. He was disruptive as a pass rusher and as a playmaker, for sure. Those years in Indianapolis, there were many years where he had double-digit sacks. Was he the defensive player of the year or not? No, I don't think he was. Number 2 on that list, Julius Peppers, 51 career forced fumbles. Then John Abraham, Chris Dolman, Jason Taylor, all with 48. How about Freeney? Freeney with 47. You had Freeney and Mathis together in Indianapolis. And by the way, so many of their defenses were not very good when they were together. Those two were great, but the defenses in general, Sanders, when he got hurt and then came back for the year that they won the Super Bowl, was big. And both, I think those guys during the year that they won the Super Bowl were out, and then they got healthy, and they played great defense during that postseason run when they ended up beating the Bears in the Super Bowl. Bruce Smith, your top LT's at 11th all-time forced fumbles with 41. TJ Watt has a couple of years to climb this list and be on that list. All right. I don't know how many of you are following this, but there have been massive layoffs at ESPN today. This got, a lot of attention yesterday when Ryan Clark was let go by ESPN. Ryan Clark was let go when he was doing a show. He was doing an NFL show, and they told him during a break that he had been let go. That seems odd, to say the least, but apparently the reason that they did it is that the news leaked that he was going to be on their layoffs list, and they didn't want him to read it on social media while he was on the air. So they went and told him, and he up and exited off the show. But a lot of big names are being laid off from ESPN. You've got kind of a list here, right, Max, that you've put together?
Yeah, I've been throwing just names on a sheet since I've been seeing them as they get rolled out this morning. The big one that really made me go, wow, was Carl Ravitch getting let go.
Wow.
And then another big name, Tom Pelissero.
Yeah.
He's getting let go at ESPN.
Saw that. I like Tom Pelissero. I think he's good.
Yeah.
I think he's a good reporter. I think he's a good NFL writer. Now, Tom Pelissero, correct me if I'm wrong, he came from the NFL Network. So the NFL Network ESPN merger, some of these names are more NFL Network guys, right?
Not Ravitch.
Not Ryan Clark.
Not Ravitch, not a few more names on here. Bart Scott, that's an ESPN guy.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I like Bart Scott. I think Bart Scott does that morning show with Greenberg.
Yeah, Get Up.
And I actually like him. I think he is, first of all, he's just one of those dudes. He'll just say anything. And he's very convicted in the way he talks. I think he's very knowledgeable. Okay. Now, he's more of a recent guy at ESPN. Who else?
Another recent ESPN hire that has now been let go is Cam Newton. If you may know him from his appearances on First Take. Ryan Clark, as we all discussed. And then another NFL Network guy who's getting let go, who I think is really good and has been nothing but good to everybody in this building. Charles Davis getting let go.
Really?
Yeah.
I like Charles Davis.
I love Chuck.
I think Charles Davis is excellent calling games, too.
Yeah, I mean, all these people that I've listed off they're going to be just fine. They will find work elsewhere. But it's just unfortunate to see them, get let go like this. It sucks when all these names that we know and love get axed, essentially.
I think there are some people whose names have not appeared that a lot of fans would probably say, well, why isn't that person gone? I don't know. Ryan Clark is the biggest. Well, Carl Ravitch, actually.
Yeah.
How long's Carl Ravitch been at ESPN?
33 years, I think.
Oh, man. And he's been excellent. Just an excellent broadcaster, period. Look, Ryan Clark is, for me, like, he's been very polarizing, as a broadcaster. I can just tell you this, that Scott, who, as most of you know, is one of my best friends for 35 plus years, has worked with him on that Monday Night Football show now for a few years. And before Scott started hosting the pregame show on Monday Night Football, Ryan Clark would appear with him, all the time. The two of them were actually on the air when, they threw it back to Scott and Ryan Clark the night that, why am I blanking on the Buffalo safety who nearly died on the field?
DeMar Hamlin.
Hamlin. When Hamlin nearly died. And I really thought Scott and Ryan Clark that night did a great job. But beyond that, Scott's always, I can tell you, Scott's always told me that he actually really likes Ryan Clark, personally and otherwise. But I think for a lot of people, he's been incredibly polarizing. There's been, I think, a little bit too much. This is one person's opinion. I just think that these outlets, for the most part, for most people, are not where the consumer wants to go for their politics. Sports are a diversion. They tend to be the place where you can get away from a lot of that stuff. And I'm not saying that cultural issues aren't worthy of discussion. And we've done a lot of it on the show over the years, a lot of it. And there have been certain things that I have felt like, to be honest with you, there's opinions, there's strong opinions, but that's not really why people are tuning in today on this particular day after a Skins game or after, during the NFL season. But he seemed to really go out of his way over and over again to turn a lot of his commentary into, non-sports commentary, to inject race, to inject politics, to inject cultural issues into a lot of conversations where it seemed like it was almost forced. I always felt that way in watching him. But I also thought from a pure NFL analysis standpoint, he was pretty good. I know he got into it last year with Peter Schrager once Schrager ended up at ESPN. That I did not remember that clip where essentially he said something to the effect of, Schrager, you wouldn't know because you weren't a player.
So that's the non-player in you is what he said.
Yeah, the non-player in you. And Schrager said, I'd appreciate it if you'd consider the non-player angle, which, we've all gotten that at some point along the way, whether it's from listeners or viewers or guests or, other, people in that are on the other side as players or coaches. Yeah, you don't know because you didn't play the game. I've always felt that's a bit of a cop-out for a lot of those people because there are angles that are interesting from people who did not play the game and see it differently. Now, people who didn't play the game or coach the game are never going to know as much about the game, more times than not, than some of those in it. At the same time, I think some of us could legitimately get plugged into, the coach's ear to tell them when to go for two and when to call timeouts about as well as some of the people that are actually doing it. But that's beside the point. So I guess the Ryan Clark and Carl Ravitch would be the two biggest names, right? I like Charles Davis. I've always liked Charles Davis.
I'd throw Pelissero in there as a big name.
That's surprising. But I guess there's no doubt that the combined efforts of the NFL Network and ESPN, they have a lot. Well, they've cornered the market pretty much on reporting. With Schefter and Rappaport, and Jeremy Fowler, you've pretty much got, at that point, it's almost redundant. But I like Pelissero.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was talking to Brian, and I kind of said this to you in a break. Like, it would not shock me if I was a media exec at Fox right now, the phones would be hot, hot, hot. I would be making so many calls right now.
But Fox, keep in mind, they're much more about the broadcasting of games than they are about the reporting. Now, their pregame show has what's-his-face, the guy that's, benching 700 pounds and wants to let you know it every time you see him. The guy that's really close with a lot of – who's the Fox NFL
Jay
reporter?
Glazer?
Yeah. He's good. That was not an intended shot necessarily. Probably sounded like one. I actually think he's good. But he's their number one reporter, NFL reporter. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy delivering all the news on the pregame show to Terry, Howie, Michael, and Jimmy.
I mean, there are obviously places for these guys to land, for sure. The TV guys specifically, but when you got to Pelissero, I'm thinking more about the reporters. So Fox, Yahoo.
The Athletic will be scooping up Pelissero very soon.
Yeah. That's where, that's where Pelissero will end up.
I hear the Athletic came into a lot of money recently, not having to pay out a certain contract to a certain reporter.
Well, yeah. Well, she resigned. She wasn't fired. She
resigned. For Pelissero.
Yeah, but didn't they add somebody already to take her place?
We'll see once football season kind of gets fleshed out. Who's doing what?
I mean, we're going to find out a lot of those ads here over the next week because training camps are underway in multiple places with rookies. In fact, I think Schefter put out a tweet this morning. Let me just see the teams that opened up camp. We've got camp opening up, people. All right, here are the teams that have reported, where rookies have reported to training camp today. The Bills, Panthers, Texans, and Dolphins. July 21st, rookies have reported. I'm assuming, I would bet you that two of those teams play in the Hall of Fame game. Because usually the teams that play in that first preseason game report a little bit earlier than everybody else. The Hall of Fame game is Carolina, Arizona. So the Panthers were on that list, right? Yes, but not the Cardinals. We are only 2 weeks away. No, 2 weeks Thursday night away from actual football on television. If that matters to you, that Hall of Fame game is pretty bad. Liam Griffin covers our team for the Washington Times. He'll join us next. Rookies, end of the week. Actual first practice a week from tomorrow out in Ashburn. And 8 weeks from today, we'll have one game in the books and be looking forward to a week 2 showdown in Dallas. I actually really love the way this season starts. It's brutal on paper. You never know how it'll play out when you get there. But at Philly and at Dallas, in 2 sort of highlighted late window 4:25 p.m. games on Fox to open up the season, we're going to know a little bit about this team for sure. And then, of course, it's coming home to play the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks in week 3 before heading to London. We'll be there before we know it. And one gentleman who will be covering all of it starting later this week and beyond is our next guest. Liam Griffin covers Washington's football team for the Washington Times at by Liam Griffin on X on Twitter. So we haven't talked in a while. So I'll start with the conversation that has dominated for a lot of fans of the team over the last month and a half. And that is, what are they going to do at wide receiver? Are they going to stick with what they have, Liam? Or do you think they'll end up adding to that room before we get to the opener in Philadelphia?
Yeah, it's a good question. It has been the number one topic on fans' minds, almost to a hair-pulling extent of the constant conversations about Brandon Ayuk, who is not on this football team, is under contract for the 49ers still, and they have no incentive to drop him. And so you can look at the what-ifs of, well, if Ayuk was a free agent, and there wasn't all the weird off-the-field social media stuff, I think he would already be on this team. He would already be getting worked into the offense. But as is, we're kind of forced to take Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and David Blau at their word when they say that they feel comfortable with the wide receivers that they have in that room right now. And on paper, it's a little bit unproven. So you obviously have Terry McLaurin at the top of the depth chart there. And after that, it's not necessarily a weak room, but there are questions. There are questions of, can Antonio Williams come out and produce immediately as a rookie? Can he produce inside and outside? Is he going to be reserved for the slot? And can you find some kind of outside threat opposite from McLaurin in the form of De'Ami Brown or Treylon Burks or Van Jefferson, who had a really, really strong season program? And so as things stand right now, I think when we open camp and probably when we open the preseason, that's going to be the wide receiver room that they run with. And at this point, I still think it's probably more likely that if somebody gets added to that room, either because of injury or a lack of development or just a lack of fit, I think it would probably be Stephon Diggs before Brandon Ayuk at this point, just because of the availability of everything.
Yeah, look, the Ayuk part has been a big part of the conversation. And I believe, and I'm not sure if you believe this as well, I think if we, turn the clock back 6-7 weeks, the chances were pretty high that he was going to end up on this roster eventually. But now, what's transpired over the last 5 weeks on social media, et cetera, I think the chances are slim and none. Always, change can happen. I mean, he could go on a contrition tour. He could get himself, reactivated. He could somehow impact his future, but he seems to be, doing nothing to actually, from an action standpoint, affect his outcome. So I think the chances are slim and none now. Where were you, say, 7 or 8 weeks ago? And it sounds like where you are now is that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I was always a little bit, apprehensive about this, because I mentioned that when you're looking at the way this wide receiver room looks now, there's a little bit of projection involved with it. And on behalf of the Commanders, if this is the group you're running with, a little bit of optimism. And even 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, when you're looking at potentially bringing Brandon Ayuk onto this football team, there's going to be projection with that too. Obviously, he has more of a pedigree and has in the past established himself more as a top tier wide receiver, but that was almost 2 years ago now. And so throughout that process, you're doing a lot of a lot of hoping of, well, I hope the injury isn't still affecting him. I hope that he's kept in shape and his conditioning is still there. I hope his head is still in the game and it's not going to be an off-field distraction. So I was always a little bit lower, but, if I were, gun to my head or whatever, yeah, maybe I would have said that he's probably going to end up on this team at some point, maybe not before training camp, but before week 1 so they can get him in. Maybe he's not a factor week 1, but later in the season. And now at this point, it's the fact that we haven't seen any indication that Ayuk is willing to take the next steps that he would have to take to get himself reinstated, to force the 49ers to make a move either in a trade or in cutting him. And not only that, he's doubled down on it every step of the way. He says, I'm never stepping foot in that facility again, and the Niners have no incentive to trade him because Ayuk has said, I'm only going to play for the Commanders. That's already my team. And so if you're another franchise that might be in the market for a receiver, you're not going to invest any kind of draft capital in that guy. And so I think it's just in a standstill right now. And until we see some kind of broad change of heart from Ayuk, I can't imagine any kind of setup that would bring him to Washington this season.
All right, let's talk specifically about the roster. You think, and I'm with you right now, I think there's a really good chance that we get to week 1 and the receiver room is, the 6 or 7 that are on the week 1 roster come from the group that they have right now. Let's focus on the offensive line right now. Do you think that they kind of rate, in whatever way you want to do it, their confidence level in Nick Allegretti at center?
Yeah, it's a good point. And I don't even know where my confidence level is in Nick Allegretti as a center. He's, pretty versatile, but I think if you ask 32 NFL teams whether they'd be comfortable with Nick Allegretti as their week 1 center, I don't know if you'd get half the team feeling good about that. So if you put it at 10, a 10 is what Laremy Tunsil is at left tackle, and, a 0 being an undrafted free agent. I'm probably somewhere near a 6.5, where I think that's going to be a serviceable spot for Allegretti. He's shown that he's able to be an NFL caliber offensive lineman. He's, was on those Chiefs Super Bowl teams. And center is not a completely foreign position to him. He's worked those interior offensive line spots before. And while center is a really key component of any NFL offensive line, he's going to be responsible for all that communication, with Jaden Daniels obviously helping that. But I think they feel more comfortable with that because of how strong and how confident they feel in those other spots across the offensive line. So I already referenced Laremy Tunsil at left tackle. You can't do much better than that. That is a complete set and forget. Give him all the single teams. You feel great about that. At left guard, they're really comfortable with either Chris Paul or Brandon Coleman. That's going to be the number one really battle.
Yeah,
I think
no
there's
doubt.
going to be more
That's
doubt.
the unknown right now, because they were comfortable losing Chris Paul because in this offense that will probably feature more zone run scheme and more athleticism, they were probably fine with Brandon Coleman there. If you were to guess who's the starter at left guard opening day?
Yeah, it's Brandon Coleman for me, and it's for that exact reason that you mentioned, where it's his athleticism. Chris Paul performed really well. Like you will not hear me talking down on Chris Paul. I think he really broke out last year, but it's exactly what you alluded to. They were glad to keep him, but he was not a priority in their offseason plans. He's a great depth piece there at left guard in case you have issues with Coleman or if you need to move him to, as a swing tackle. But Coleman's athleticism is really impressive, and he's coming into that point in his NFL career where you're going to want to see him establish himself at some point, at some position on the offensive line, whereas like you saw Sam Cosmi make that move from right tackle to right guard, and clearly he's really well established and well cemented there. So for me, I think Brandon Coleman is going to be the week one starter. And the question for me is he able to show enough to hold on to that throughout the season?
In the backfield, I'll ask you a question I've asked everybody the last few weeks. Who do you think gets the majority of the snaps as the lead back? Let's just say through the first half of the season.
I think it's going to be so close to a 50-50 split, and it's going to kind of depend on the game script, I feel like, a little bit of, where they are in these games. If they're able to jump out to early leads, I would wager a guess that here's the way I'm looking at it is I feel like the snap count is going to be really close between Ja'Cory Krusty Merritt and Rashad White. but I think Ja'Cory Cross-Kamara, especially in the early half of the season, is going to have a substantial lead in the number of carries. I think they're going to really look to Rachaad White in all those, third and long, third down situations. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities to make plays out of the backfield, but I think they're going to want to see Bill. He's going to have the opportunity to establish himself as that lead back who White fills, kind of what they saw in 2024 with the mix between Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, where you're able to bring them in different situations. But with the system that David Blau is bringing in, they want to marry those run and pass concepts as much as they possibly can. So we already know they're going to be under center way more than they used to be. They're going to be working that play action for shots down the field. And for that to work to the best of its ability, you need to have somebody in the backfield where you can't just sit back on your laurels and say, all right, Bill's in the backfield, so they're not going to throw it because he's not a pass catching threat. And on the other side, you're not going to want to be, all right, well, Rachaad White is back there, so we can kind of sit back and play the pass. And so I think they're going to kind of determine quickly whether Bill has done enough this offseason to establish himself as a pass catcher. But Rachaad White, I think as the season goes on, he has really impressed through the offseason program. He's probably been the number one offensive player that has kind of jumped off in those, padless reps. So that snap share is going to be really interesting. And so early on, I think the carries might favor Bill. But total snaps, receptions, total touches, I think the edge might go to Rachaad White.
Liam Griffin from the Washington Times joining us. What's Ben Sinnott's role going to be?
I think Ben Sinnott would like to know that as well. And I am still not giving up on the Ben Sinnott project. I think that it was just a terrible fit for him in Cliff Kingsbury. I don't know if there was ever going to be an established role for him in that offense, especially with Zach Ertz ahead of him on the depth chart. But what we've seen a little bit of early on in the OTAs, and this is all with a grain of salt because David Blau and the offense have told us that they have not fully finished installing everything. That's what the first kind of week of training camp is going to be, is finishing those installs. But I think Sinnott is able to kind of establish his versatility a little bit more in this offense, because you'll have Sherry Conquo, who's a solid pass catcher, and you have John Bates, who's a really solid blocker, one of the best in the league at that position. And you'll have Sinnott, who can kind of join those two concepts together, kind of in a little bit of a move role. And I think you're going to see him more in the backfield. Traditional fullbacks are in the NFL, but I think you might catch a little bit more of Ben Sinnott in that almost Kyle Juszczyk-y lead block, outlet passing option. And here's the other thing is he has the hands and he has the skill set to kind of work those downfield routes as well, working in a wheel route, working in a post or a corner. Like, I think that he's going to have those opportunities, and he hasn't said it publicly. I haven't obviously asked him about it, but I think there's kind of an understanding that this is going to be a make or break season for him, because you are losing that benefit of the doubt of, well, you're in a Cliff Kingsbury offense where we're in the gun 99% of the time. It's hard for your skill set to shine. With this David Blau offense, which we're kind of confident that this is going to be a little bit shades of Kevin O'Connell, shades of Ben Johnson, make it his own a little bit. But if Ben Sinnott can't make it work in this system, I'm not sure how many more opportunities he's going to have to make it work.
Give me a player right now, and the answer could be you don't think anybody's going to emerge, but give me a player right now that's off the radar offensively for most of us that you think by the end of camp or early in the season is a much bigger contributor than we're expecting right now. Do you have one of those players that you think is going that, I mean, for me, like I'm not going to give you the player name right now. I want to hear what you say, but it's like the player that they know is going to be a much bigger contributor. They have a pretty good sense of it, and we don't know.
Yeah, and it's almost a cop-out answer because of the draft slot, but I think Antonio Williams is going really under-discussed in all these conversations, and I think that's the key for them when we're talking about, are they going to bring in somebody? I think Antonio Williams is going to be the number 2 wide receiver on this team by the end of the year in receptions, and I feel pretty confident in that. because of his skill set, because of his kind of polished route running that he already has, that fits in so well with this David Blau offense that we're expecting. And we have seen rookies, especially rookies who are drafted in those mid to late rounds, we have seen them in the past couple of years in the NFL really be able to establish themselves quickly. And so I think Antonio Williams,
his comp, Amon-Ra, was, by the time he got to the end of his rookie year, was a major contributor for Detroit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown and Puka Nacua. I'm not saying he's going to be a Pro Bowl or all-pro level talent in his rookie year, but I think some of the size concerns relating to him are a little bit overblown. I don't think he's going to be reserved to the slot. I know you mentioned the Amon-Ra St. Brown comparison as a bit of a, power slot is what people call it. I can see that as well, but I think he'll be able to work a little bit more on the outside than people are expecting, which means that his target share is going to be there. He's going to have those routes run, which is such a key metric for receivers to make an impact. And with Terry McLaurin kind of stealing shades of the coverage, Williams' route running is really going to have an opportunity to shine. And I think it just goes so under discussed. And so I think by the time week 4 rolls around, or by the time they get back from London or to the bye week, I think we're going to be looking at Antonio Williams to be like, all right, well, they hit on that guy. So that's 2 receivers down. See if they can get a third to emerge in the form of Luke McCaffrey or Jalen Lane, and you feel really confident when the team rolls out in 11 personnel.
No, I like that one too. And I think that a lot of people have high expectations, but you pushed it to he's going to be the second leading pass catcher, and he's going to be a major presence offensively. And it may be why they're not super concerned. And they do speak in very optimistic terms about their current receiver room. For me, there are 2 names. We've already talked about one of them, but I just liked Rachaad White in Tampa. I thought he was very underrated in terms of his vision as a runner between the tackles, and I think this scheme will fit him well. Not to mention he's an experienced, pass blocker, pass catcher, and I also think that there is a chance that Van Jefferson ends up being a little bit more than most people think. I always felt with him in Los Angeles that he was better than most people thought, and he plays bigger than most people realize. So we'll see. Let's flip it to the defensive side of the ball. Of the newcomers, and there are a lot of them, as we both know, give me the defensive player among the newcomers that you feel most confident won't bust. Because one of these guys, at least one, we're going to look back at it, the signing, and go and say, yeah, they got it wrong on him. There's no doubt that that's more likely going to be the case, at least one of them. Give me the guy that you feel safely about, the guy that has, I guess, for the lack of a better description, the highest floor.
Yeah, and I won't take the easy answer there. You said new addition, so I was like, all right, Sonny Styles gets that clear with a bullet, but I think you're referring to the free agent ads in particular.
Yeah, I was referring to that. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. So I think safety Nick Cross is
exactly.
I do think that he's going to be probably one of the key additions to this defense. And I also think that the blend of scheme fit, which, kind of the word of the day for us, between him and Durante Jones is crucial. And I also think it seems to be a really good match. He's an incredible athlete, and I think you're going to see that very quickly. And he's going to have the opportunity to align at different areas of the field and really flash that athleticism where, again, we do a lot of speculation throughout the offseason of what these schemes are going to look like. And so obviously you look at the trees that they came from. This Durante Jones system has a lot in common with what Brian Flores was running in Minnesota, which obviously gave this franchise nightmares in December last year.
Yeah.
And Nick Cross is somebody who can blitz effectively, who can drop back into cover well, who can really be such an incredible chess piece for your group. And I think he's shown enough at the NFL level where obviously he's not an elite player, but when you're matching that skill set with this playbook and this scheme, I think that's a really strong fit. Whereas, I don't think you're going to look at the Odafe Owe contract as a poor choice, because you're always going to need edge rushers, and they kind of attacked that position and that defensive line in general. They kind of attacked it in bulk, where you're saying, all right, if Oweh doesn't work out, maybe we'll get enough out of Omenihu and Kayvon Chason to kind of be a viable defensive line. But I think pass rushers and edge rushers in particular, outside of that top crop, that those elite perennial Pro Bowl level players, it's kind of hard to predict and project them on a year-to-year basis. And Oweh obviously being traded from Baltimore to Los Angeles, like, he does not have the kind of consistency as an NFL edge rusher that would really make you feel comfortable to kind of give him that floor. And then same kind of thing with Leo Chenal, where I also love his fit in this defense. I've kind of questioned in the past whether he's going to kind of adapt the Andrew Van Ginkel role that linebacker has in Minnesota that is so hard to replicate. I think time will tell on that. But same kind of thing where you haven't seen him really establish himself as a down-to-down player. And so when you start to kind of cross those off, I look to Nick Cross and, you know, the investment they made in him, the way that we expect this setup to use safeties. I think you're going to have a lot of big nickel setups where you have three safeties on the field with him and Will Harris and Quan Martin. And I think all those skill sets, if things go right, can gel so well. And even if not, I think that you'll still be looking at Nick Cross as one of the better players in the secondary.
That's my answer to the question too, and I haven't asked that question, but I that's who I would select too. Add to everything you said, he is always available, and he's a very good tackler. So I think that there's not a lot of downside to that signing. I think he's going to be a contributor, and the floor is the highest on him as well. So you mentioned Leo Chenal last week on the NFL Network, and Max, I forget if we played this or not, but Leo Chenal indicated that he was the Mike linebacker. Now, I actually don't even know what that means in a 3-4 base, if that's going to be their base, because really you have two inside linebackers. You don't have a true, Dick Butkus, Mike linebacker. Nobody's lining up as a second level over the center player typically, although in the Brian Flores system, they line up everywhere. I mean, it's complete chaos at the line of scrimmage. But my question to you is, do you think he gave us information that he's going to wear the green dot, that he's going to be the guy on the field communicating with Durante Jones?
Yeah, I don't feel that way. I think, and Dan Quinn has been really not cagey about it, but a little bit coy in saying, like, we want Sonny to, become an NFL player, to learn what it's like, what NFL practices look like and all that. But he was getting those green dot reps early on. And I also think he's going to be the defensive player who's on the field for 100% of the snaps. And so
hold on. I want to make sure I'm clear. You're talking about Sonny Styles now, or you're talking about Leo Chenal?
I think Sonny Styles is going to be the player who's wearing the green dot.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think Leo Chenal I do think that his quotes to the NFL Network are interesting, and that how he will deploy versus potentially how Frankie Louvu deploys. That is something that's going to be very interesting to me. Well, I'm not sure that they're going to be playing the exact same role on this defense. And so I think time will tell on that. But I think what Chenal is referring to, and what you kind of alluded to there, is in this 3-4 base, which we expect them to see a lot, to use, primarily a lot more. Nickel is being used a lot as base in the NFL, but I think we're going to see them line up in that 3-4 a lot. And so I think Sonny Styles is going to be there wearing the green dot. And I think next to him, I think what Chenal is referring to there is he is going to be lined up in the middle of that defense as well, coming downhill, working on his pass coverage. And so I'm curious if that means that Chenal and Louvu are splitting those snaps, or if they're trying to use Louvu in less traditional ways, if they're lining him up outside, potentially getting him those edge rushing snaps, because we've seen him do that a bit throughout his tenure in Washington, and it went really well for him in 2024. And, different members of that defense have alluded to Frankie's pass rushing ability in the past. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to be cluing in on a bit as we get into training camp and into those preseason games, of how does that linebacker group align on a down-to-down basis. And, we're looking at it in a very hypothetical way right now. It could look completely different. It could, Styles could be wearing the green dot and not lining up in the exact middle of the field. We have no idea. And so that's really what's interesting to me about Chanel's comment there is I'm not convinced that he will be wearing the green dot. But I do think he'll be lining up in that, middle linebacker role. Similarly, that's interesting is who is if they're not in a big nickel with a third safety, if they're in a traditional nickel with two linebackers, who is that second linebacker on a potential passing down? It's something that's going to be interesting to me of where Luvu and Chanel and
You're going through this, and I'm thinking to myself, they've got. I mean, we think they have a lot of options. I mean, we're not throwing out T.J. Watt, Micah Parsons, and Myles Garrett and Will Anderson Jr. options or Fred Warner options on the inside, but they have a lot of options here. Like just the idea of the first 3rd and long of the season at the Link in Philadelphia, who are the pass rushers on the field? Well, always got to be one of them. Let's not forget that, Dorrance Armstrong might be one of them. Then you've got Chason. Then you have potentially what you just described as a role for Luvu. So that's going to be that first look. I think one of the Ben and I were talking about this yesterday, Liam. This is the season of just so many unknowns because of the two coordinators being different and all of the new players specifically on defense. And we're really not going to know until they start playing real games, which is typically the case anyway. But until they line it up against Philadelphia on September 13th, we're not going to know the answers to these. But it's going to be interesting to watch it. Thank you for doing this. Yeah, go ahead.
No problem. Yeah, no, I was just saying, it's one of the things that makes this the last point. It's one of the things I like about their offseason approach where they address things in bulk. So if Oweh doesn't work out, you have other options. You have Dorrance if, coming back from the injury is a little bit more difficult than we're anticipating. You have Shea Felon. Like, I think that's why there's a lot to be hopeful for about this defense. And if one thing doesn't work out, you have other options.
Yeah, it's my frustration with some of the fans who say that Adam Peters didn't do enough. They added more new players through free agency than any team in the league, and they spent top 3 or top 4 money. Okay, they didn't land on Pierce. They didn't land on Dobbs. They ultimately, got outbid, by a lot for Linderbaum. And there are a couple of other examples. But like you said, this defense was so bad last year, and they addressed it in bulk, and we'll see how it plays out. I do think, though, when we get to the end of 26, there will be many of those new players that worked out, but there are going to be 1 or 2 where we're going to, that was not worth it, But none of them really are over-the-top money. Oweh, the one guy that got long-term and big money. Thanks, Liam, for doing this.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Talking Nats next with Andrew Golden after this. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
kick and the pitch. Swing a long drive, left field for Chaparro. Back to left fielder McCarthy to the wall, and there it goes. 3 batters in, the Nationals lead it 3-0. Andres Chaparro with home run number 4. 3 on this trip since the All-Star break.
Yeah, he had 8 RBIs in the 23-4 win on Friday night in Sacramento against the A's. Nats win last night to get to 51-50 on the season. 7-3 final. 3 homers in the game. We told you about C.J. Abrams' homer earlier, which was a 2-run blast that gave them a 6-3 lead. They went on to win it 7-3. Andrew Golden's joining us right now. Andrew covered the team for the Post for a while, now is covering the team and more for the Baltimore Banner. You can follow Andrew on X at Andrew C. Golden. So I want to go back to Sunday's series finale in Sacramento against the A's and talk about Foster Griffin and the incredible run that he's been on, Andrew. 8 straight starts of 1 earned run or less. That is a record for this franchise. He's been unscorable upon. The 8 hits were the most he's given up during the stretch by a long shot. What makes him so good, or what has made him so good this year as a 30-year-old rookie?
Yeah, well, I think it's really hard to, as a hitter, to choose which of the 7 pitches you're going to prepare for. I think that's the first thing off the bat. And he throws all of them really well, all around the strike zone really effectively, and they all move off of each other very well. And so when he sequences properly and he sets things up well, it's really hard for hitters to prepare for. Like you think you're ready for his cutter, and then he throws a slider. You think you're ready for a slider, then he throws his cutter, right? And I think like having 7 pitches, it'd be one thing to have 7, you can only throw 2 well. But if you have 7 pitches, you can throw 5 or 6 of them pretty effectively, or all 7 at the same time really effectively. It makes it harder to hit. And so I think what you're just seeing from over this little stretch is that like a lot of his pitches are working. He's leaning on those, and he's having a lot of success. But he's not going to blow you away with velocity. That's always been his thing, is like throw at 90 to 93, which like, maybe 10 years ago would have been pretty effective, but now that's not really fast anymore in this current MLB. But I think he just throws all his pitches really well.
What do you think they're going to do with him at the trade deadline?
I think they're going to at least listen on offers. I think obviously when you have a guy on an expiring contract, I think it would be you have to listen and see what's out there. Maybe there's a deal you can't pass up, but this is just my personal opinion. Not fully knowing what direction they'll go. Is I think they should see if they can keep him and extend him. Like I think at some point you're going to have to sign free agent pitchers this offseason regardless. So why not re-sign a guy who's had success with you, who you have in the house and who's had success? And so I think like they should see what's out there. I'm not saying they shouldn't make a deal if it's like, something that blows them away, right? Or there's a prospect they really covet that they can get in return for him. But at the same time, like I think it'd be good to extend him and show that there's a commitment to at least, spending some money. Like they haven't given out a deal over 2 years since 2020. So I wasn't even covering the team the last time they gave out a contract of more than 2 years.
Oop, did we lose Andrew? Max, did we lose Andrew?
Sounds like we did.
Okay. I'm we had Grant on the show yesterday talking about Foster Griffin, and he got into the detail of, all right, we've got Andrew back. We lost you there for a moment. So maybe just with respect to, you would extend Foster Griffin, it sounds like. Do you think they will? Because look, he's going to get a contract with the way he's pitched. He's got a market, doesn't he, in free agency?
I think he does have a market in free agency. Yeah, I definitely do. But I think obviously the difficult part is he's 30 right now. So obviously,
right.
Are you getting him at the peak of your career, and what's the max value you're going to get? I think if the Nats gave him like a 3-year deal for like, I don't know exactly what what comparable contracts are out there for a 30-year-old rookie who came from Japan, right? But I think like something like three years for 45, somewhere between 40 and 50, maybe that's a comparable deal, maybe a little more than that. So, we'll see what the market is out there. If the Nationals think that like he might not come back because there's a better market out there, then like maybe they will trade him because they think that that's the case. I think I would just try to extend him if I could.
Overall, what do you think right now they're thinking about the trade deadline? There are more games to play in this series against Colorado. People have pointed out, and I agree, I mean, if you could get the next two here in Denver and they're sitting there at 53 and 50, and at that point, I mean, they're a game out now of the wild card third spot. Maybe they're in that third spot. Maybe it changes their thinking, but what do you think their strategy is right now?
I think their strategy right now is to figure out a way to balance having success currently in the future. Like, I don't think you're going to see them go for a full-on buy, but I also don't think they would engage in a full sell if they're one game out of the wild card. I think it sends a bad message to the team if you're going to trade guys when they're having success, right? Like, I don't think that's really a good message to send. But I don't expect them to do some major buy of like trading for 3 or 4 relievers, nor do I think that really makes a ton of sense. Like, I don't think this bullpen is 1 or 2 relievers away from being a really good bullpen. You've seen what happens when they play really good playoff teams. They played the Phillies, they played the Yankees. They couldn't. None of the pitchers that came in could really hold on to leads that well. And so, I think if I were them, I would honestly try to stand pat, make some minor trades on the edges where you can get, call up some of your prospects and see what they can do. But I don't know if I would go for a full sell or a full buy. I think they've performed well enough to deserve the opportunity to compete. But I also don't know if you want to sell your farm for a team that, maybe wasn't expected to contend this early and still has some flaws, obviously, in their bullpen with their starting pitching rotation.
What do you think about Luis Garcia's season and the possibility that they move him? There's been some discussion about that.
Yeah, I think Luis had a great season. I think obviously they've honed in on where he has success and whatever the messaging has been with him. It's clearly clicking. I think that would make a lot of sense to trade Luis Garcia. They have Abimelec Ortiz in AAA, and they have Yohandy Morales. They have options behind Luis, and so I think that's a situation where, to what I was just mentioning, like if you can trade a guy who may not be a part of your future, and you can bring up some prospects and give them an opportunity to prove themselves, like I think that's an opportunity where that makes sense. I think the same for their starting pitching rotation. If they're expiring contracts and they can trade and try to call some guys up to fill the spots, I think they should do that. And so I think Louis would be a really good example of a guy who I think that they should try to shop and see what teams are willing to take on. Like, you don't want to force a trade, but I think he'd be a guy that would make a ton of sense to trade. I think he's probably the guy who makes probably the most sense to trade, I think. I mean, obviously CJ and Foster Griffin are the main ones, but I think Louis makes a ton of sense in terms of, a guy you can get really good value for, who's playing really good baseball right now.
Andrew, the conversation is totally reasonable. I had Grant on yesterday. Tommy is on my podcast twice a week, Lavero, and everybody kind of views it the same way, which is this has been a really nice competitive season. It's been unexpected. They're the leading run total team in the bigs. They are very good offensively, which is completely out of left field. And I take a step back from that, and I look at it and I say that is, of course, the balance between trying to remain competitive. You pointed out something that's very important, and that is if you start trading off pieces that have helped you get to 51-50, what does that say to James Wood and some of the other players, CJ Abrams, if he doesn't get dealt, about how you're viewing the rest of the year? But when I think about it organizationally, this is a team that since 2019 has been terrible. They had the worst luck ever with COVID striking the year after they won the World Series with respect to the business of the team. You've got owners that have been looking to sell it, but we know those owners, they're not going to sell it for a penny less than what they think it's worth. And this opportunity is good for the business of the team. It's good for sort of the morale of this, the fan base, which has sort of diminished here in recent years. Can you afford not to go for it if you're sitting in the business chairs of this organization?
That's a good question. I think you can. I think it's really interesting. And I think reading into Paul Taboni's comments that he said before, where he's like, I haven't been here before, so I can't necessarily speak to what's happened before. I can only speak to where it is now. So I don't know if he feels the weight of the past 6 years in the way that a lot of fans do. But I think that what this has been a really exciting time for fans to think about what could potentially come. And that's why I think you can let's not forget, this team still is the best offense in baseball. So I think that there's a potential they could hit themselves into a wild card spot in series if they keep playing the way they're playing, right? So
and with two good starters, with two decent starters in Griffin and Cavalli, in a short series, they'd have a chance.
Right. And so I just don't think that you can go. You definitely. I don't think if they keep trending the way they are, that you can afford to go on a full on. We're gonna sell people off this roster. We're gonna trade Foster Griffin, those sorts of things.
Right.
But I do think like the ceiling of this team. Like I just don't know if they get into a series. Yeah, in theory they can win a series right against. As a wild card against the 3 seed or whatever it is. But if they go up against the Dodgers or a Brewers or a Phillies, like I just don't know how well they stack up against those, or the Braves. Like I just don't know how well they stack up against those teams. And I guess that's where my hesitation is of like, I just don't know if it's worth it to go on for a full buy either. But from a business perspective, like I think they can. 'Cause I think what happened this year has been like, the fans are really excited about the fact that the coaching staff has improved the players this much. And I think that's enough of a buy-in, I think, for fans to be like, okay, now we can get really excited, about what's to come in the future. Now I think it turns to, this off season of like, okay, like, was this a fluke or is this team legitimately have opportunity to be the same offense as last year? And if that's the case, like you have to spend on your bullpen. You have to bring in some legitimate pieces to help out. If both the team and the organization believes they can compete. So I think the business question is less of a decision of right now as it is this offseason. Like, are you really going to invest to make this team good, or are you going to let this like positive momentum kind of flame off, after a really good year?
By the way, what do you think of Cosgrove's pitching here for them recently out of the bullpen?
Yeah, I think he threw 10 pitches yesterday over 2 innings. Like that was a pretty impressive outing. Yeah, I think he's been good. And I think that also speaks to, in terms of buying or selling, the Nationals have been making moves to get bullpen arms whatever way possible, waiver claims. So I do still see some fight from the front office of like making minor moves to try to help improve the bullpen. So I don't think they're in a full white flag, we don't care. They are trying, but I think they're making moves to try without mortgaging their future. And so I think that they're actually towing the line about as well as you can. But I think that obviously if the team continues to, play over 500 and, like you're going to have to make some moves like a Cosgrove or make some moves to try to see if they can make a push without doing anything too crazy,
I think your point about, this is the word I would use. If they ended up, moving Garcia, moving Foster Griffin, it would be a bit deflating to that clubhouse. It would be deflating to the fan base too. If you're saying, yeah, but just wait until 2028, wait until 2029 with what we're getting with these prospects, which by the way, as we know, there are no guarantees on that. And in a market like this one, which does not treat its baseball team, the owners don't, like it's in Boston or LA or New York. I just think that you can't turn away from an opportunity. And I think the intriguing part about the opportunity is the fact that offensively, they would be scary in a short series. They would.
Yeah. Yeah, they would, because they're the best offense in baseball. Like, no one wants to face the best offense in baseball in the playoffs. Like if you take the team out of it and you said to somebody, do you want to face the best offense in baseball? They would say in the playoffs, they'd say absolutely not in a short game series.
Right. Yeah. Do I have you, Andrew, or did we lose you again?
Me?
I think we got him back. All right. So okay, I guess my last question to you would just be this. We're sitting here with a lot of, they've exceeded expectations, a lot of good feeling about this team and certain players on the team that have emerged totally unexpectedly, Foster Griffin being number one on that list. What are the chances a month from now it's the same conversation, that they are very much in the thick of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think that, Kevin, can you repeat that question one more time?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can you repeat the question one more time? I think it cut out.
Yeah, just essentially saying, look, there are 61 games left, and this could still end up being, a sub-500 team when all is said and done. And the competition gets a little stiffer here, right? I mean, they've got a 4-game set in Atlanta. They got a 4-game set in Philadelphia. Will we enter, say, the month of September with like a legitimate feeling like the last month of the season is meaningful. They've got a shot to contend for that third wild card spot.
I think so, because I think that ultimately, like, they have I keep going back to the best offense in baseball. I think they have the best offense in baseball. They have Foster Griffin and Kate Cavalli, who I think are two solid, rotation pieces. And I think that their schedule isn't like, it's not like a bear per se. I think it's a fairly reasonable schedule. So I think we could get to that spot. And I think it comes down to, like, how well they're performing, down the stretch in September. But I look at their schedule, and it doesn't, obviously they have a big series against the Braves and the Phillies, but I think if they can hold their own, I think you're looking at that they could have the opportunity this, coming in September to make some noise. But I just think that their division's really tough, and they have a lot of division games down the stretch. They're gonna have to really be able to compete against those division teams. I think in August they play the Phillies, the Mets. I think they play every team in their division in August, right? And so I think that will be really telling to see how much they can
toughest remaining schedule according to Tankathon in baseball.
Right. So they do have some tough opponents coming up. So we'll kind of see how they manage all of it.
Andrew, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Andrew's with the Baltimore Banner right now at Andrew C. Golden on X. By the way, baseball, the Red Sox beat the Orioles last night. You had a team that had a 13-game winning streak in Boston, and the Orioles had won 7 in a row. I mean, you'd have to look that up to see what the most combined games wins in a row in a matchup in the regular season is. That's got to be up there on the list. But the Red Sox, what'd you say?
It was a quick stat. I think it was like the first, the most wins combined in a game or in a matchup heading into it since like the 1880s.
Oh, wow. I was just throwing that out there because it just seemed like it'd be really hard to have a matchup between a team that had won 13 in a row and 7 in a row, 20 in a row combined. Boston won last night 6-5. They've won 14 in a row. I mean, this team was talking about selling off and, everybody, losing their jobs, and they are now 6 games out in the National League East, and they are currently in the third wild card spot in the American League. Baseball heating up, and I'll tell you, these wild card races, if you look at the American League, there are like 10 teams legitimately in the hunt. In the National League, it's like 8 teams legitimately in the hunt. All right, we are done for the day. Chris is up next.